to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. Today's show was recorded live from The Point at High Point Market on Friday, October 12th, 2018, as part of the Designer Viewpoint Series. So first of all, my great thanks to the High Point Market Authority for inviting me to do this. And I invited Kesha Franklin to take part in this interview with me. They let us choose who we wanted to interview. And I'm pretty sure you're going to be glad that I selected Kesha. Kesha is the principal of Halden Interiors out of New York City, New Jersey. And she got her beginning as an interior designer through a path that was born of a failed endeavor. And it really shook her world. She shares the story in the interview, so I'm going to let Kesha explain it to you. But when you hear it, see if it doesn't remind you, too, of the saying that when you're praying and praying for something and you think that your prayer isn't being answered, and then all of a sudden, at some point, you find out that the universe had an even better plan for you. From this story, then Kesha goes on and she shares how her firm grew and how she has given much thought to how she frames the conversation with her potential clients so that her projects run her way. There are terrific insights here, and I'm really certain that you're going to enjoy Kesha's conversation. Before we get to this, I want to say a big thank you to the designers who came out to The Point and were there for the live podcast. I have to say, it's fun. I couldn't do it every day live because it was hard to zero in and do my regular drill sergeant thing, but it certainly was fun, and all the more fun having the faces that I know and love and have come to really appreciate right there with me. So thank you, ladies, for coming out. A big thanks to our sponsor, Kravit, who is still in the middle of their 100-year anniversary. Talk about that for an accomplishment. They had a party at their showroom where they were featuring the new book, 100 Years of Inspired Design by Jennifer Bowles. You can get that book on Amazon. And I just like to say, remember that when you are in your Kravit showroom and your local showroom or your rep comes to see you, thank them for sponsoring the show and for helping me bring this show to you. And also remember that Kravit has a thank you to you too for listening to the show. You can get 10% off any one fabric, wallpaper, or trim order by using the code AWDB10 at checkout, right? So any Kravit fabric, wallpaper, or trim order, all right? I mean, why not, right? Use the code AWDB10, save 10% off, and invest that 10% in something. Invest it in a course for your business on accounting or bookkeeping, or invest it in coaching, or how about go to dinner on it, right? Do something for yourself. But in the meantime, when you are next in a Kravit showroom, please take the minute and thank the showroom manager for Kravit helping me bring the show to you. I really do appreciate it, and it's nice for them to know it, okay? All right, I am very happy to introduce you to Kesha. You're going to love her candor and her willingness to share the behind the scenes of her growing her interior design firm. Let's hear that interview now. So, first of all, I want to thank High Point Market Authority and Ashley and her team, because they are rock stars, and we really appreciate everything that you do when you put this gala Disneyland together for all of us every single year, twice a year, no less, right? Yeah. And I thank You guys, my peeps, for coming out to see us live. It's so fun and exciting to have somebody here watching us podcast instead of being in my sweatpants and my T-shirt on my third floor studio. And mostly thank you to you, Kesha.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your coming here to be with us today, and I'm very excited to share your story with our colleagues. Not only, you have to remember, not only these design peeps here, but there's going to be another several thousand that are going to hear this story of yours. So, guys, Kesha has a background that comes from the fashion world, and she was one of those people that does those big-time stage production things in Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. Like, this is some pedigree here, which is why you can see that she looks so fabulous, okay? And it was funny because I read on your website, Kesha, that it lends to you an attention to detail, right? Because, of course, what's interesting is I have a stepson, that was, and he has decided to move on to be an actor, but he was a celebrity makeup artist, and he did Diane von Furstenberg's runway shows for a few years. He was the lead. Okay, the key, I think they call it. I don't know the terms, right? But the precision that happens backstage is insane. And it's like, we had a drapery installed today that something with the brackets isn't fabulous. And so there they are. They're off to wherever places installers go to get parts and make things happen. But when you're at Fashion Week, it's do or die.
It's live. Yes, it is.
So that's interesting that informs your design. So, but the story to get to design is the story I'd love for you to share with everybody before I start picking apart your career, because it's a great story.
So I guess we're talking about how I got here. Well, my introduction to interior design was actually an accident. I started a business, or was asked by someone to partner on opening up a bar lounge downtown Brooklyn. We had gotten some, I guess, insight that the Barclay Center, if you guys are all familiar with that, was coming to Brooklyn. And so this is now 2003. And we found a really cool location, I want to say about 3 blocks away from where the Barclay is now, currently, and set out to open up this lounge space. I had done, in addition to doing some work in the fashion industry, was also doing some things in the event planning world, but more on the corporate side. So large events, like 1,600 plus attendees, type of work. And so this felt kind of, norm for me. It was an area I felt like I had some, experience in. But unfortunately, I learned all too quickly and with a real financial cost attached to it that I wasn't that well experienced in what I needed to do to open up a lounge space, and let alone a restaurant. I take my hat off to people who really make that happen. It's quite a very, it's a difficult industry and field to get into. But with that said, 3 years I was on this project. So from 2003 to 2006, we did our very, very best to open it up. And during that time, I didn't realize that I was designing, right? Because if you open up a space that's a lounge space, 4 floors, Asian fusion restaurant on the lower level, you got to make it look nice. It has to be appealing. And I was working alongside, well, not really working alongside, or I didn't think I was, but I hired an architect by the name of Shanad Bodner. And I kind of felt like, well, we're paying him, right? So he's doing the work. But I didn't realize that I had very strong opinions on what I wanted that space to look like. And a lot of the end design and ideas were mine. And so to fast forward through it a little bit, the project I couldn't get it off the ground. I was managing an 18-man crew daily, which was also allowing me to hone in on my project management skills. So that was also happening in the process. A lot of tears. I had the contractor that was working one day said to me, Kesha, you can't cry at the job site. Like when I say
there's
tears,
no
I
crying
meant
in construction,
there's no crying
Kesha.
in construction. So I was learning how to put my big girl panties on, right? But had no clue that all of this was happening in the interim. But the last day that we finally said, okay, we're closing up shop, I took a trip to Manhattan and went to give Shanad his final check. And I was all sad and feeling really pathetic. And he said to me, he was just like, have you ever thought about getting into, design, like interiors? And I was like, me? I don't know. I'm like crying.
I'm a failed restaurateur.
Right,
Why would I do that?
What am I? I'm like, what do I do now? Kind of thing. After 3 years, right? A lot of investment financially, sweat equity. So he pulls up on his screen, the graphics, the renderings that we had created together. And he's like, look. And I'm looking and kind of now looking in a different way, right? Because before I'm looking at it in, okay, move this, let's move that. But now I'm looking at it, really kind of stepping back as a spectator of what we had created. And I was like, wow, this is really beautiful. And he was like, yeah, and you did that. He was like, I can't even take credit. This was really all you. And he said, I really think you have something. You have a natural eye, and you should look into this. And so I left, went home, and true story, I think I may have laid in bed for about 6 months. I'm not a big person to begin with, but I think I had gone down to like 115 pounds. I was really, really just depressed. A lot of work had went into that project, and to not see it come to fruition was tough. And also then figuring out what to do next, right? Because I had all these plans for this venture. So after the 6 months, my husband was like, okay, that's enough. Stop crying and pull it together. And he said, I think you should really look into this. He's like, look at our house. Look at, you're always giving, tips and ideas. And, someone says something to you like that kind of comes natural. You don't really see it as an opportunity or, a career nonetheless. Especially being an island girl. My family's from Belize. Growing up, you had to be a doctor or a lawyer. Creatively, they weren't supporting the creative side. Even though my father and myself, I draw as well. I am an artist. But it was just a thing that we did. It wasn't really something that they felt like could be something I could support myself on. So with that, I took a stab at it, and I started to do very, very, I wouldn't even call them projects, but if you called and said, Kesha, I got a garage, it needs like a little organizing, and can you hang a photo in the meantime so that it doesn't look all plain, that was what I was doing, like literally. And then finally, someone paid me to do it and said, I got $1,000, like it was $1,000. And I thought, oh my God, this is like great, someone's gonna pay me to do these 2 rooms. And so I quickly realized that I had a natural knack for this. I had really learned some serious project management skills from before, so even though these small little projects didn't require that much attention, I was paying that much attention to it. I took it really seriously, even though it was starting off almost as like this hobby. Yes, on the side, I still did have my job doing the backstage management and also doing some events at the time. But this was quickly becoming something that I couldn't get away from.
Right.
And so along that journey, project after project started coming in, and I would say maybe, the recession came around, 2008, 2009, so my little project or venture kind of took a dive because, during that time, it's a luxury to have an interior designer, right?
Yes, except that that she just went like 5 years later and I got to go backwards, right? Like, what happened here? There's a whole lot in between, Kesha. Okay. So, first of all, I just want to recap a couple of things because I knew the story and I'm not sure it was clear in the telling of it that this was her restaurant. This was her restaurant she was trying to build. And so that's why she didn't really realize that she was designing it as she was doing it. It was something that it was part of what she was responsible for, the money, and so she had to make a decision. And what the architect pointed out to her at the end of it, that a lot of the creative decisions were actually her ideas. And so I think that's a tremendous gift that this man gave you, number one,
Yes.
because he didn't need to tell it to you. He could have just said, I did a great job. Thanks for the check. So I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome that he acknowledged it. I think it's awesome that he inspired you and that he shared it with you and encouraged you to do it. So the thing is, though, that you did say in there, so now we go out and we do it, and so we take a garage and we, find accessories at Bed Bath & Beyond for somebody, right?
Exactly.
Okay. The thing is that if, you in the audience here, how many of you did go look at her website when I asked you to do it? Like crazy pants, right? This is not normal interior design. This is not normal. And so it is a tremendous thing to understand that you go from that level of, I don't even know I do this for a living, to what you're doing now. So, and what's cool about that is that itself is cool. But there's a lot that happens in between. So what happens? How do we go from doing our first jobs for free, our first paid job, and turning it into a business and turning it into something where you start to attract that luxury client? Because my question is, this is what happens. I have designers every day say to me, how do I break into the luxury market? And so what did that look like for you, Kesha? Did it really just come from your brand, your aesthetic as a person lives in that space and lives in that world? Like, how did that happen?
No, it didn't happen that way. But so right after, if you're talking about how do you start the process, if you're a designer and you're trying to figure out if this is what you want to do. So I had to start a business, right? So yes, it was after the first friend who said, hey, I'll give you this $1,000. Yes, then I did indeed start the business. The event space / restaurant was going to be named Beautiful. And
Pretty name.
From that, because this whole, idea that I could be this designer came from that failed experience, we actually named the company The Beautiful Experience. So that was actually the name of my first interior design firm. It was called The Beautiful Experience. And that process actually was tough. It was hard. I didn't know anything. I didn't know the business. And to be honest, for a long time, because I hadn't gone to school for this, I felt like I was doing the industry, like I was kind of discrediting the industry. And so I wasn't looking for help. I didn't go to anyone because I thought I wouldn't have been taken seriously. So where nowadays you have social media where you can, kind of hide behind, right? Back then, networking was really networking. You had to get out and you had to be there. And because I didn't feel like I would have been accepted, I learned a lot the hard way. I didn't have anyone to ask. So there was a real process in trying to figure out, how do I put a contract together? What does a budget sheet look like? What are the terms? Understanding my own worth, right? How to charge was really a critical point as well, especially when you start to do the job, when you really start to work the job, and you understand all that goes into it. I think there's a point for every designer, especially in the beginning, where the honeymoon phase starts to end. In the beginning, you just want to do this room. Oh my God, you're in love with the ottoman, you're in love with the table, but this is business. It's a real business. And that part of it took some real hard knocks to figure out and learn. And how I learned about it was reading some books. The Business of Interior Design, right? By Keith. I keep forgetting his last name. But yes, I've read that a few times. And also, to be honest, learning even from watching good old HGTV and seeing some things, which I quickly learned after a while that wasn't
not the way to learn.
That wasn't real. That was so not real. It's not. But it was a stepping stone to just try to understand a couple of processes and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning. Now, to go back to your question about the luxury market, truthfully, that happened after that, because there was that time with the recession where I really wasn't doing a lot of work. And I want to say back in 2010, 2011, as things started to pick up, I realized that, one, I needed to figure out what my niche was. When I did my research about successful designers, right? So I love like Kelly Wearstler, I love Jamie Drake, I was looking at people like that, Joy Moyler. And I was just like, okay, they have an aesthetic, they have a look. When I started, I didn't know that. So if you were to look back at my website for the Beautiful Experience, I had traditional, I had eclectic, I did modern. Whatever you needed, I did it, right? Because I was kind of, just
See, that's
learning.
a great point. Let me just pull that apart a little bit, because we know that on the podcast. We know that you have to figure out what your look is in the sense of your brand. Yeah. Okay, you don't have to just design to that look, but you have to figure out what it is. Like Chris Ramey said on the podcast, the luxury interior designer has a point of view. That is one of the very essential things that separates an interior designer from a luxury interior designer, that a luxury interior designer has a point of view. So the thing that's interesting is that I looked at Halden Interiors website. That website is one more beautiful room after another, but they all have that very high-end, tailored, clean, still cozy. You feel like you can live in it, but you feel like you're living on vacation. That's what I look at when I look in those rooms.
Thank you.
Right? And so the thing is, what's interesting, and the point that I want to get around to right now is that she pulled off the website all the work that didn't line up and look just like that. It could be as beautiful, but like, what do I always use on the show? The reference to the Tuscan Mediterranean look, right? Whatever. So it could be as beautiful. It could be for a $20,000 ranch, 20,000 square foot ranch in Dallas. It could be even a more expensive, more high-end project, but it's a complete enigma to the look that Kesha is establishing as her point of view. And so that is a huge thing, because I think younger designers, I always say younger, and I mean newer. Newer designers have a hard time when they're really proud of a project, or they only have 2 or 3 projects and they're not all the same, right? But that's how you start to pull ahead and pull away and differentiate yourself from everyone else, right?
Yes. And to your point about what I pulled off of the website in order to finally rebrand to Halden Interiors, I actually sat on it. I worked for 3 years and to figure out what that rebranding was going to look like. It took me 3 years.
She needed Nicole Heimer at Curio Electro, I'm just saying.
It took a long time. And in that process, if I can jump to this, I also wanted to make sure that it wasn't just about a look, but also internally that my business changed as well, because I wanted my clientele to change. So I was very, very fortunate in 2013, I think it was, to be a part of the 10,000 Small Business Goldman Sachs program.
Love it.
And so that was amazing to be a part of that. And that's actually what really set my rebranding in motion. Okay. And took that time to kind of look for those clients that I knew would give me the portfolio that I needed. Because, I mean, it's funny, Nicole White is a friend of mine.
She was just on this past Tuesday's show. Yes, oh, my God, rock star.
And she's right. You need to know that it's okay to charge a certain price point. It's okay to understand that, if this is the level of service that you want, then this is also kind of what I need in order to produce that. And so I say that to say that having clients who can afford what you are, what the service that you're giving is important. And you see how I paused with that?
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
hard, right, to say, hey, you need some money. But if you're talking high end, and if you want to get into the luxury side of interior design, I mean, it requires that. We're in High Point Furniture Market. I mean, you go into some of these stores, the craftsmanship. I wanted to also, be able to not only just provide it to the clients who can afford it, but also to just be able to partner and use and create an experience around all these beautifully crafted furniture,
right.
and lighting. I mean, it's exciting.
So thinking about having to, the chicken and the egg, right? So we want to do higher end luxury design, and we need to find that client. One of the things that I find, and you'll maybe share a little bit about your experience with it, is that I have designers that I'm coaching in masterminds and one-on-ones, right? And so one of the biggest things that I'm consistently really pushing them to do is to raise their hourly rate. And the thing is, I just had a conversation with somebody this past week about it, and in the conversation, basically they had raised $50 from where they were from a month ago because of my insistence, right? But it's still not enough. It's still not enough. And what my argument is, and I've made it on the show, you've heard me make the argument on the show, is that if I'm a client with some dollar bills and I go to a website and a designer is $85 an hour and another one is $275, I'm not calling the $85 an hour designer. And maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm crazy, but I'm also a consumer. And if both pictures look great, both rooms look great, and here's what I'm also going to find with that $275, $10, is I'm going to see in the story of the About Me page the story of that designer. I come from high style fashion. I know detail because of this. And there's going to be something that I can go, oh, see, $275 an hour, and she knows detail, and she's a fashion lady, and yeah, okay, I don't need to save that money. I want this. Right? So you can't get there if you're afraid to raise your rate. Now, you have to have the goods. You have to know how to run a project. You have to actually know how to design. You can't be still learning, right? Because the stakes are higher, and everything happens. But if you really feel like you have the chops, they're not going to come to you and say, I think you're really fabulous. I can see from your website you have a point of view. I can see from your website that you do terrific design, and you're only $85 an hour. I'll take two. They're not going to do it because they're not even shopping over there.
Well, that's also a consumer who understands the process also of interior design, right? So there are two different consumers there. There is one who's just looking for a deal, right? And we're all always looking for a deal.
Right, but that's when we go to Target. When we go to Neiman's, we're going to pay, and we know it.
No, to be honest with you, you'd be surprised at the calls that I still get. And sometimes I think, well, did you look at the site? No, but people will try, and why not, right? They will try, and they're looking for that deal. But I like the consumer who comes to me and who raises the expectation.
Right.
I want that. I want the job where I'm nervous.
Right.
Where I'm like, oh, okay.
I got to do a good job. It matters.
Job. And it matters.
This referral is going to be golden.
Right. And they're looking for me to deliver. And they're on top of what's going on. I'm excited about that because then that means I'm going to grow. I'm going to stretch. Versus a project where it's just like, okay, I've done this and I already know exactly what they're looking for.
Right.
And that's whether both are at the same price point.
Right. So tell us a little bit about that movement from inching your rates up. I have found every designer I've ever spoken to has that, I don't think I can do it. Should I do it? I don't know if I should do it. How was that for you?
Well, I think part of it was about the portfolio and being able to show a higher end.
Okay, so getting one or two projects under your belt that had some nice photos.
That, absolutely, and also the right furnishings and furniture lines that you can kind of say, hey, you use Holly Hunt and all these different places that people are like, okay, there's a
This is
level
legit.
there. This is legit, and there's a level there. Truthfully, I don't do an hourly often.
Okay.
I prefer a flat rate.
Oh.
I do.
That's crazy, right? We don't see too many that do just flat rate.
Yeah, it's kind of been what works for me. It depends. Now, obviously, doing a flat rate, and if we go over a certain time, have it not being, on my end. But let's say sometimes clients, decide that they want to change the scope or things grow, then we may end up doing an hourly on the back end of things, because now the scope has changed and what we may have agreed upon in the service agreement is no longer that.
So there's two things in there. So in order for you to confidently specify a flat fee, you have to really have your ducks in a row and understand what is going to happen in this project. Mm-hmm. And of course, that speaks to your background, from the experience that you had with the restaurant, your own personal experience with running a tight ship in the fashion industry. But then it also speaks to the first thing you said was, and if the scope creeps, if this happens, we're going to have a conversation. Yeah. You're not just going to I guess I'm working for free for the next 6 weeks. That's the thing. So flat fee, I think, can work if it suits you, as long as you bring the other skills to the table, that you understand you are going to have the hard conversation if things go haywire.
Yeah, and for me, I don't like to have the conversation, to
Nobody
be honest.
does,
I do have an office manager that I usually let have the conversation. And then if neither one of us wants to have the conversation, then that's where the service agreement needs to be tight.
Right.
So things are outlined, if this happens, if that happens.
Right.
So you can, you don't want to put a 15-page agreement in front of someone, but the key things that you need to highlight should be in that service agreement, and one of them is definitely about the time management of the project, and if things should go over or if things should change, then this is what will happen. You tell
me how you handle your conversation about the agreement. I always feel like you said, the LOA could be 100 miles long, and there's 9,000 things in there. But I always say, if you are working in project after project, and the same stumbling blocks come up in a project, then you're not doing a good job explaining that. And I feel like, for me, I would rather, as a consumer, look, how many times, what do? We have to sign an iTunes agreement. It's like 90 pages of scrolling, agree, whatever. How many people are reading your contract? Right. They're doing the same thing, whatever, sign here, Kesha, make me a house, right? But what I feel like is, if you know where the stumbling blocks are, those are the things that I want to say in the beginning, when we're not upset with each other and there is no drama. I just want to tell you, number 9 here, 7 out of 10 of my clients in my first year in business, this is where we had a problem. We don't have a problem at number 7 anymore, because I talked to you about number 7 for 10 minutes right now. Sit down while I talk to you about number 7. Yeah. 7 is when you start to ask me to do things that aren't in the contract, or whatever it is, right? Because you can almost filter through your personality. My personality is sarcastic, right? So I would do it that way. This is where it's going to break down. I can tell you right now. So if, blah, blah, blah. And what's going to happen is that even when I tell you this, you're still going to come back to me and push me on this. And I'm going to say, remember when we talked about this? Right? And so what do you do when you find that there's certain spots that, did you learn lessons like that over the years and say, I got to do a better job on the outset on these couple of things?
Can I tell you, Luann, I probably can count on one hand how many, troublesome projects or clients I've had.
So that means you're running a tight ship.
Let me knock on wood.
Good for you.
And part of that is I do a weekly project update. Whether it's you want it in a text, how do you like to communicate?
Right.
Everyone's send a text nowadays.
Yeah.
And that's how it comes in. It says project update. And I literally do a little quick bullet point. So they're aware of changes. I think in the moments when I have had an issue, it's because there was some lapse in communication, them assuming that certain things were being done this way or that way. I also put in my contract that there's a good portion of kind of creative control that I have over the project. I don't want to be micromanaged. So those are the types of things that I do put up front, because then why hire me? You know, the couple projects where I've had little issues is where a client wants to use me as a shopper. I'm not a shopper. I'm here to give you an experience. And a part of that is that you're trusting why you hired me. So if you're looking at my website and you see something there, you see this experience, you see this look, this
point of view.
Point of view, yes, this point of view, then let me give you that point of view, right? The minute I come in and you start changing that point of view, then you have your point of view.
Right.
And that's fine.
And you're just trying to get my discounts or whatever.
Exactly.
That's what you mean by that.
And
There's
I'm not that
people that are just
designer.
wanting to have you execute purchases, and it's like,
correct.
That's a procurement officer.
Right,
Go find one.
Right. So I would say if I had any kind of issues or hurdles I've had to overcome, it would be making sure that part of the conversation is clear about what this process looks like and what my role is here. It is a partnership. I use that word a lot.
Good.
I am going in there. I want them to trust me. You know, recently I posted something. I was like, that is the sweet spot for a designer, when the client trusts them.
Right.
Because then they can walk away. They're more looking like, okay, you pick. You know, even if you present something, I love it when the client says, no, you pick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, there we go.
Okay.
Now you're going to get the best of me.
Yes.
And it's worked in my favor because a lot of my business is through referrals. And one of the things that I tell the client when I'm finished with the project, and I say, now if you refer me, make sure whoever you refer, you tell them, trust the process.
Oh, that's
trust
nice.
The process.
That's nice.
And they do it.
You teach
they
them what to
literally
say. That's awesome. I love it.
So a project I'm on now, when we met, she said it. She said, Vanessa told me to trust the process. And I was like, yes, Vanessa.
Love it. I love it. And the other thing too in here, what you're hearing is, and I hope you are hearing it, is that you are setting up the conversation that you're the driver.
Yes.
I can hear you establishing, I am the authority here. You're not having to say those words by saying partner. It implies this isn't like, I'm not your beck and call girl here. I am your partner.
Yes.
These are the things that I'll do. This is the way I'm going to do it. And of course, you say it prettier than I'm like reiterating it here. But I heard that in the way you described it. You are coming across as a professional. And I think that is one of the problems. It's a hurdle that a younger designer has to overcome, is not feeling like they have the power to be in the driver's seat.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And yes, not feeling like they're in the driver's seat. And I will say, because I'm talking now from being a more seasoned designer, when I was, a newbie, one of the things that still ended up making me, I guess, favorable and not having issues with my client, but it didn't work well with me, was that I was a, client pleaser. Oh. So there's also that you have to be very careful of, right? So it worked. The client loved me. We didn't have any issue. However, I was burnt out, and I knew where I had gone.
No boundaries.
There were no boundaries, but the idea was just, I wanted them to love me. I wanted them to love the design, right?
So, love me,
love me, just love me. But part of that, being kind of like the captain of the ship came from some of that. Not because the clients weren't happy at the end or we had any issues, but because I had to kind of take an assessment of, okay, how did this go down? How did this work? I wasn't valuing me, my time, and really understanding that, no, I can't work, as an entrepreneur. People are like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, you make sure you really know what you're talking about and that you're ready for this, because my day will start at 8 a.m. and end at 2 a.m. And that's kind of what was happening. And so even now, it's still a challenge, with the time management. But all of that said, it was really about, okay, taking an assessment of me and how is this working for me, more so than the client. Right. Because, yes, I'm either being a people pleaser or, yes, I'm running that tight ship. And so, again, knock on wood, I really haven't had too many issues with clients, and so that's
good.
been a blessing.
But that's also the other thing in there is that, you know, she's explaining how you're actively evaluate.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't run on year after year. It's working, it's not working, it feels like crap, it feels great. Like, I say that every project needs an autopsy.
Yes. Yes.
So it needs a fiscal autopsy.
It does.
It needs a process autopsy. It needs emotional autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did this project, was it a success on every level? Was it profitable?
Right.
Was it fun to do and I made no money? Was it fun to do and on a $10,000 job I made $1,000? Or was it fun to do, I made my margins and the process was honored, and at the end of it I got a good referral because the process went well.
Right.
And the thing is, if you just run job after job and you don't stop and do that, then you don't have that opportunity to say, you know, the problem in here is me.
Right. I was going to say
right.
the autopsy is on you,
That's
the
what
designer,
I'm saying.
not on the client.
No, it's your own personal
you.
autopsy
Yeah.
of every facet of the project. And in what you're describing is you were able to sit back and say, this is me. I'm not setting boundaries. That's why these couple of projects haven't been enjoyable, or I've been stressed out.
Right.
And I have to say, I don't think there is a single thing, I don't care what we're talking about now, business, you know, personal, there's always something when you have a problem, whether it's a little baby problem, a big, huge problem, that you can sit and look and say, you know, I could have done that one thing differently.
Absolutely.
you know, the other guy could have done 10 things differently, but you probably could have done at least one different, right?
Yes, agreed.
No, you have to look in the mirror. You really do. So, you know, at WindowWorks, I talk about WindowWorks all the time. Every single job is evaluated for profit and loss and for process.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, and think about us. We're going to run 100, 200 customers a month through our business, and we do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, you guys got 10, 12 projects a year. I'm sorry. You could do it.
Yeah, agreed. We can.
So, but I think it's awesome. Do you guys have any questions for Kesha? Do you guys have any questions for Kesha? I have no idea how much time they want us to go here, but... Oh, you do have a question, Wen? Yeah.
So when you started to switch over to more luxury design clients, when the, say, media jobs called you,
Oh, good question.
did you turn it down? Or what did you say to them?
So I'm going to repeat it for the Facebook land. So Wendy Wallachuk, previous podcast guest, I'll just say, is asking Kesha when she started to move into the luxury market and the mid-level client continued to call. How did she handle it? Did she just say flat out no, or what did you do?
So in the beginning, I took them. And then I found that the experience was not the same. And I thought, you know, for a while, I was just like, well, that's not right, Kesha. You know, just because they can't afford the same amount like this other project could, you should still take the job, right? But that was more about me wanting to be nice. It was more about whatever the client needed. But it really no longer was working for my brand and where I wanted my brand to go. Because the couple projects I did take, I didn't want to photograph them because that's a whole other investment. And I would say to young designers, new designers, seasoned designers, you know, investing in photos and quality pictures is so important because it really makes a difference. Presentation is everything, especially when you're talking about a visual business, right? That's how you're getting that client before the client then ends up getting to know you. So I wasn't able with these projects, I wasn't able to photograph them or didn't felt like they'd end up living on my website. So the investment in it started to change emotionally, financially. You know, what was the return that I was getting on this? Really, there was none other than the client walking away happy. And my husband would say to me, he was like, well, Kesha, you know, do the smaller job this way and then, you know, invest more. And I was like, I don't know how to do that either. You know, when I'm in, I'm in. You know, it's going to be the same level of service.
You can't deliver less service.
I can't deliver less service. So it just ended up being that way. But one of the things I did start to do, and it wasn't necessarily taking less, but I set a price point. I was like, okay, I'm not doing jobs under X amount. And that kind of allowed me to not have the hard conversation, right? And also then set some guidelines, like you were saying, for where and kind of the steering of the business to more of the higher end clientele.
So when they would call, would you simply say, I know we've worked together in the past, or I know you were referred from a friend, but my business model has changed, and now, the room, if you're willing to invest $100,000 in the room, that's what, that's how you had the conversation.
Yes, because I would say, for instance, because it's changed over the years, but I would say, oh, well, I'm not really taking a job for less than $50,000. I say, oh, no, well, I have that. But then I'm like, yeah, but not for the whole house.
Right. For the room. Right.
For the room,
Yeah,
so it would be that. And yes, I would say it in the nicest way that I could.
Well, it's your
but
prerogative.
I had to.
It's your prerogative to do it. You're not Mother Teresa of interior design.
Right.
So Claire has a question.
Yes.
So she's asking, where is Kesha located, and what is the price point for a room starting point?
So I recently moved to New Jersey. I've only been there 9 months.
Where are you in
But
Jersey?
I'm in Greenbrook, New Jersey.
Oh, okay, out the sticks.
So yes, in Somerset County. But been in Brooklyn, had a home there for the past 19 years. So that's where my business kind of had its roots. But for a room, I'm really starting at the minimum 75. Yeah, for a room. I mean, and it makes sense when you talk about all what's going into that process. It's, and don't take out. I mean, obviously for 75,000, we're not talking about remodeling, but sometimes there are small upgrades if you need to resand the floors. I mean, easily,
75
right.
doesn't include remodeling.
It doesn't. Right. I wanted to say that too. Right. It doesn't. No, it does not.
Doesn't include her fee either.
No.
Oh, we have a question from Facebook? Instagram? Okay.
Oh, so.
And I'm going to just say, from your start date till you made your break.
Okay.
Nobody handed you a break,
No,
lady. I know that.
no,
I heard
they
the story.
don't. I want to say so I started in 2006. And then, like I mentioned, 2008, 9, recession came around. So I really wasn't doing a lot then. And then 2010 kind of got back on the grind. And I would say it was 2011. So 2011. So it took some years. It took about a good 4 or 5 years.
Takes a while
for
to
that
gel.
big break. And that big break really was a big break because there was a really great budget. And I did the entire condo unit. So that was awesome because prior to that, it was room here, a room there. And another thing, Luann, I got to knock on wood. And I have designers who we get together and we talk. And sometimes they're like, what do you mean you don't do a room? I can't tell you. I want to say probably from 2011, I've never done a room. I do most of my, all. I really have to say all. What you see on the website, even though there may just be some photos, from certain rooms, I do the entire homes. I'm doing the entire apartment, the entire home, which is so great. And to be honest, it's hard for me I'm a little spoiled to even go back to doing a room because what I'm providing is a full experience.
Right.
It's a full experience that's going on. And it goes beyond just beautiful things. It does. I mean, that is a part of it, but I'm really getting to know my clients. I want to understand what experience they want to have, what are their goals in this home that they're living in, whether it be involving children or they're single or, it's just a couple that's starting out. So it's personal for me. So to be able to do it from the ground up is amazing.
I love it. I think it's awesome. Anybody else have any other questions?
Yes, so I do all. Yes, so it can go from full construction, or just design.
Just
or just renovations. And
redesigning.
renovation, I don't really call like changing floors or, painting and doing that. I mean, that's kind of common with the whole thing. Construction for me is a gut job, and yes, we do that as well. Yeah.
How did you determine to start doing almost like salary-based jobs instead of hourly?
Well, to to be honest, I didn't know in the beginning. I didn't know that there was do hourly versus this. Someone said, hey, can you do the room? And then I was like, okay, it's $1,000. No, right? So in the beginning, right, it was that $1,000. And so I really didn't know. And so how I started to do it was then doing a percentage of the cost of the project. And so that's how I do it now, with the addition of those hours if the scope changes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Rashna.
So yes, the process from going to the mid-level clientele to the high-end level truthfully happened with getting some incredible tools from that Goldman Sachs program, the 10,000 Small Business Program. I had to create a growth plan while I was there. I had to do a pitch in front of my, what they call a cohort. And so I really had to dig deep in trying to figure out what that clientele looked like, what I wanted it to look like. It was very interesting that as an interior designer, right, we're kind of like, okay, hire me. And you want that client to hire you, which means that they're seeking you out. And one of the ways that the program at Goldman Sachs got me to look at my business was like, well, forget who wants you, who do you want? And so it just changed the whole viewpoint for me, because I wasn't thinking about that. I just wanted to be picked, right? You want to work. You know, you're passionate about this thing and you need to make a living. So yeah, pick me. But when you have someone saying, no, stop for a second, and now look and see, who do you want? What does that clientele look like to you? What's your ideal client? What's your dream client? What's your dream project? And just hearing that and going through that for 5 months was life-changing. Just in, again, the value, understanding my worth. Also, it stretched me, right? Because sometimes we want things that we're not quite there yet. So I also had to meet the thing that I wanted.
That's right. That's right.
Because a lot
you
of
have
times
to be
you
ready.
want all kinds of things, and you're not ready for
That's
it,
right.
right? So it took time, and part of it was that I knew I needed to change my look. The beautiful experience was great, but if I wanted high end, I wouldn't go there, even though I knew I could do it, right? But who knows that? They don't know me behind what I'm putting in front of them. So the first part for me was branding. It was the branding part of it and how to market myself. And I did that at the top of this year, actually, 2018. I had Halden in place for about 3 years, because one thing that you probably didn't know or mention was that, but in 2015, I got an incredible opportunity. I actually designed Colin Kaepernick's home, and that was featured on Elle Decor as well. So I had that great opportunity, and that was also from coming out of, I mean, I didn't know he was going to be the ideal client, and he was amazing and still is. But that came from the information and the tools that I had gotten from that Goldman Sachs program. And it was what kind of created that shift for me. And so from 2015 to 2018, that's what I'm doing. And to be honest with you, what you see on the website, there's already a whole nother wave of work that I've been working on. So it will change again and continue to change until, you know, I guess keep changing, right? Because it's what's the top, right? You just got to keep going for it, and just produce good work.
Well, and so what you're hearing is that she's not just in her studio wishing for things.
No.
She's out doing work. In this case, it was the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. But it's working with a business coach. It's going to High Point to collaborate and up your game. It's taking advantage of all sorts of things that enrich you as a business person. Because you see, the answer isn't, right? The answer isn't, well, I started picking prettier sofas. She said, no, the answer was that she started taking care of the business end of her business.
Yes.
That's what she did. She, flipped the switch in her mind on the business side of it. And so we had that. How many of you guys listened to the Adam Urbanski show on how to, Yes, Kimberly, Wendy. That's an excellent show, and it's a very in-depth show. You need a pen and paper. You need to listen to it 2 or 3 times, but it is a show that really does help you identify your ideal client. I'm sure not to the level that the Goldman Sachs program does, but if that's not at your disposal, I try and do my best.
Well, please know that that program is free.
Yeah, you have to apply to it, right?
You
and
apply.
applied.
I mean,
I know.
it's
I
quite
looked it up
it's-
after Mulaney told me about
Yes,
it.
it's
Mulaney
quite the
B was part of it.
process.
I was like, can I do this? I
Yes,
want to
you
do this.
can.
Right.
Yes,
I'm like,
you
but I don't have time. I was like, okay, can I not work and just do this?
Right, yeah. No, I mean, it was quite the commitment.
It's cool.
But just so that folks know, it was free. It's just there's a process and like, board. You have to fill out like 3 applications and then have this interview with like 5 different people. But at the end, it was so worth it. So just if anyone is interested, definitely look into
Yes.
it because it really did change my business.
Yeah,
And
I
so it was
remember
great.
Mulaney discussing it.
Yeah.
Mulaney B, we're talking about. She was on the show very, very early, first couple of 3 months of the podcast, and
She's amazing.
She is. I love that lady. She is a fierce lady, and she talked about that same thing and the things that she learned from it, and the way it, same as what you just said, it just opened her mind and had her look at her business, her goals, her career, her path or direction in a completely different way,
Right.
and also created a network of people that help you get there, right?
Agreed. And just also understanding for, you were talking about not sitting down and going to get it. You have to, because if you're a designer starting out, where are you starting that? You're at home.
Right.
Right? So it's also a business that you have to force yourself to get out there. You have to get out there. You have to network. You have to come to places like this, a High Point Market, to connect. Even if your clientele can't afford a lot of what you see here, right? To just be exposed to what's going on. It's critical.
Yeah, definitely.
Because otherwise, most of the time, it's you and your computer, and if you're lucky enough to hire someone, right? And that was something else, too, that the program at Goldman Sachs helped me to understand, that even if I didn't have an employee, I'm the boss of this business. And I think that's something really, really important to know, that even if it's just you, you're the boss.
Right, and that a lot of people that is their goal, to be a solo their whole life. There's nothing, we're done? The heck, man? All right.
This was great.
Well, they should have known before they invited me. My show has no limits. We just go till the curiosity ends. All right. Well, thank you so much, sweetie.
You're
I really,
welcome.
really
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
your
you. I
coming.
appreciate
Thank
being
you
here.
guys for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kesha's years in the exclusive world of couture fashion, when she was the backstage production manager and wardrobe stylist for Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, this surrounded her by the work of well-known designers such as Vera Wang, Jason Wu, Michael Kors, Donna Karan, and Lavin. And this definitely sharpened her attention to detail, her eye for styling, and it informed her sensibility to craftsmanship. But Kesha had to do some very critical things to be the success that she is today, in addition to this training, okay? First, she had to be open, and she had to listen to the compliment, the critique of the architect that she worked so closely with for those 3 years. And then she had to get up and plow through that painful and expensive lesson of her restaurant not opening. She had to believe that she could do something else and that it was worth doing something else. You see, the pivot is often very scary, and you're not sure if you should be pivoting, right? I mean, there's no sign that says this is definitely the way to go. You just have this voice inside of you. So, and often it starts with someone else's voice, like in Kesha's case, with the architect. And then the voice grows. And then it sometimes becomes your voice. And you start to feel it and see it. And you start to think, I can do this. So this is an important skill to develop in yourself and to, look, you can't listen to every willy-nilly voice, right? But I know that you know the difference when it's truly real. when it really, what I know is your inner voice does not lie to you. So if there's a voice that's saying, I'm really not good at this. I'm not really good at being an interior designer. But there's something deeper that gets mad when you hear that play in your head. That's the voice you want to hear. You want to hear the one that's really tiny under there and says, nuh-uh, I can do it. Okay? That's the voice. All right? So there's a lot of noise in our heads, but take the time to cultivate the skill, the discipline of weeding through the white noise and getting down to that true intuition voice, okay? And that's what Kesha had to do, and I really compliment her for doing that. The other thing that she did is she sought out help, business help. In her case, it was the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. What is it for you? Is it a simple commitment to meet with a designer bestie every 2 weeks or once a month for accountability? When you reach out and you think about the ways that you can improve your business, they don't all involve money. Yes, you can join masterminds. Yes, you can sign up for one-on-one coaching. Yes, you can sign up for online courses. But if that's not where you're at yet and that's not what you have the ability to do, there are ways to set up accountability, because that's really all it comes down to, right? Is that accountability. And then the further you get in your career, the more important it becomes to get quality, good business advice. Okay? So wherever you are in your stage, this is what you want to do. Think about, what are you lacking? Where are you running into problems? Okay? There's no shame in not knowing how to run the business side of your business. Okay? But if you are in business, be a business person and get the skills to do it well. If you were really bad at coordinating backsplashes and floors and countertops and cabinets, you wouldn't just say, oh, well, I hope no one notices. I mean, right? You wouldn't. You'd figure out a way so that you got good at doing that coordination, whether it was a class, a seminar, going to your local shops and your vendors and asking for advice, right? So don't do that with your business. Don't just say, well, I hope no one notices, okay? Because it's only you that you're hurting, right? It's your ability to be successful that you're hurting. And that makes me very sad, I'm just going to say, right? So, do you run your firm with precision and attention to detail like Kesha? All right? That's the question. So if not, what do you have to do to get better at it? Figure it out and do it. That's what I'm asking you to do. All right. I also love that Kesha described how she makes sure potential clients know that she's not a shopper for them. I love that. I haven't heard that sentence before. It's so clear. It's as plain as a nose in your face. I'm not a shopper for you, right? Working with her, she says they have to place their trust in her judgment, that she decides how and what the design will be. All right. Her clients don't go online, send her a list and say, should we use this in my living room? And by the way, can you order it and give me your discount? No, because Kesha is in charge of how her business works. She has a process, and that's how the project goes, according to her process. And you heard her. She knows it's not easy in the beginning. She remembers taking projects that weren't ideal for her, but she is encouraging you. She's saying, I know I was there, but I've come through it, and you can too. All right. She is encouraging you to follow in her footsteps. She is encouraging you to be the leader in your firm, to be the one who sets the standard of how it will work and how it is to be a client of yours. Your choice, your decision, right? Okay. Now, I want to encourage you to look at Kesha's website. It's haldeninteriors.com, HALDEN interiors.com. Her work is striking. And it is no surprise to me that Kesha has been named 2 years in a row as a designer to watch by the Black Interior Designers Network. So be sure to check that out. All right. And if you are inspired by Kesha's example and know you need to tighten your project management systems, well, please check out our other sponsor, MyDoma Studio. MyDoma Studio is the perfect platform for you to manage everything from time tracking. Did you hear that? They have time tracking now, okay? So that you can get paid for all of the hours that you've worked, all right? Or even if you just need to start to train yourself to really be cognizant of how many hours it actually takes you to do a project or to do a portion of the project, right? You also have an ability to catalog and keep in your project all of the items that you have specified for a particular client. You also have the ability to have all your communications between you and that specific client and your vendors all in that project. So no more, I sent you an email, didn't you get it? No more searching for information from a vendor. It's all right there. Easy to find, easy to manage, easy to help you look like and be the professional that you are. Check them out at mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed-business. MYDOMA studio.com/a-well-designed-business. All righty. Huge thank you to Gabby Home, Alder & Tweed, Theodore Alexander, ASID National, High Point Market Authority, the NKBA, and Cravit for hosting the parties, hosting the panel discussions, because it's in these discussions that we learn from each other and how we share ideas so that we get better at running our businesses. And my big thanks to you for coming out to meet me and to take part in these discussions. I love talking with you. I love learning about your businesses and about the things that you've learned from a well-designed business. But you know what I love most? You know what it is. I love it when you tell me about the decisions that you have made, the actual steps that you have taken to be a better business person. That's what I really love. So make your decision today. Decide what you will do today, what you will change, what you will improve, what you will implement this week to be better at running your business. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.